Jones, and he's with Calix. And Calix is a international company that actually had its basic roots in Minnesota many years ago as a company called Optical Solutions, and grew into was acquired by Calix and is really a leading company in rural broadband deployment in terms of providing the electronics and management software that runs these networks. And so consequently, they have a great relationship with broadband providers all over the country, especially those that are focused on building in rural telephone companies, rural electric cooperatives, small privately held telephone companies, and so on, really supporting the entrepreneurial rural pioneers in fiber optics. And so Nick works especially, he's the senior manager for the electric co-op market. So he's probably pretty familiar with some of the electric co-ops in Tennessee that are deploying fiber. So Nick, thank you so much for your time today, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I apologize for the technical difficulties. I happen to be in South Florida for a conference in Broward County, and I was depending on them to have decent Wi-Fi, but maybe that's why we're having this discussion, because that's a challenge still in a lot of places across the country. So hopefully you can hear me okay and see my slides, and we can get through this. Awesome. So I do live in Tennessee. I live in Lexington, Tennessee, in West Tennessee. I was born in Decatur, or not born in Nashville, raised in Decatur County. So most of my life, with the exception of a few years down in North Alabama, have kind of been spent there. And my history is a little unique when it comes to this world, to where I was in a different career path for about 20 years. And I had an electric cooperative CEO who was a friend of mine when I was living in North Alabama, who came to me one day about 7, 8 years ago and said, "Hey, I'm thinking about doing fiber. What do you think?" And I said, "You do electric? What in the world?" He said, "No, we just need it." And I said, "Well, I have 2 megs at my house, which is oddly enough about what I have right now." I said, "Yes, sign me up, let's go." And so I got to kind of be involved in that process and watch what it did for that community, and just got really excited about it, and got an opportunity to go into that work with another company other than Calix, and worked with about 20 to 25 different communities across the country, helping them to, bring that connection that would make a difference. A lot of those places are places that you're familiar with around Tennessee, Sequatchie Valley, Knoxville Utilities, Meriwether Lewis, etc. During that time. And then about a year ago, I got an opportunity to come work for Calix. And so this is just a really exciting thing to me to think about the opportunity that fiber and broadband presents to your community. I will never forget early on in my career in this world, I was in Waverly, Tennessee, and we had gone down to the library there before they started their fiber build. And about 100 kids got off the school bus that day. And I asked the guy that was taking me around, I said, "What are they doing?" And he said, "Well, they all have homework that they need to do." And this was pre-COVID. He said they got about 15 to 20 minutes of homework that they need to do. There's 6 computers in that library that they're going to basically race to get to. He said some of them will sit there for a couple of hours before they get to go home just to get that homework done. You go to that same place today, maybe 5 kids get off, because now those kids can go home, they can do what they need to do, and they can go be a kid. And so it's just things like that that I get to see on a regular basis and say, hey, this is important, this matters, and this makes a difference in lives all across the world. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today, and kind of why your community needs fiber, needs broadband, and needs access, and kind of just give you some basics. Now, I'm no supreme expert in all of these things. What I found is there's really, really smart technical people, but I've been able to understand some of that and translate some of that to the rest of us. And so hopefully I can share some of that today. And if you have questions and I can't answer them, we'll get them answered for you in one way or the other. The fiber is a really big deal, because when you think about um, where people choose to live, a lot of times it's based upon their access to reliable high-speed internet. When we came back to Tennessee, I looked to buy my grandparents' house, and the challenge was it did not have fiber, it did not have broadband. And I had to kind of work to get that, to make that happen before I could even choose to buy that house. You ask most real estate agents, what's one of the top questions that they get when it comes to someone looking to purchase a home? What's the internet like? What's the broadband like? Do they have broadband? Do they have high speed internet? And we have seen over and over and over again how this impacts communities when they have this access, when they have this offering to allow people to live and to work where they want to, but still have access to the things that allow them to do their job, allow them to take care of their family, allow them to connect to the world around them. So it's a continued importance. And the reality is, it's the time is now. That it's estimated that 24 million Americans still do not have internet service at home. And many of these are located in rural and remote areas. Um, the cool thing is the government's throwing billions of dollars at this problem, and creating opportunities for communities, for electric cooperatives, for other groups to come together to say, hey, let's do something about this. Let's impact our community, not just today, but for decades to come, because we're going to provide this resource that is needed. And so, why is broadband an essential service? It's no longer just a luxury. That's the reality. When we start looking at this question and talking about broadband, it's not just something, oh, well, it'd be nice to have. So many things are dependent upon that. My job, for example, I'm dependent upon having broadband services to be able to do my job in the way that I need to do it. It's important for economic development, for social civil engagement, education, public safety, telemedicine, and then for me personally, balls football. I don't know if that's important to anybody else on the call today, but that's very important to me, being a born and bred Tennessee guy. So I want to have access to know what's happening with Heupel and what's happening with Tennessee baseball right now, and broadband allows me to do that. But it allows me to do a lot of other things that are really important. Not too long ago, I was in Wisconsin traveling around with a co-op general manager, and he told me a story about he has a small town of about 3,000 people. They have about 7,000 meters or members on their electric cooperative. And they've chosen to build broadband because basically nobody else would do that for them. And he said, one of the most impactful things that have happened to me in this whole process is he said, I got a letter from a lady that was in her 70s. And he said, basically the letter said at the very top of the letter, because of fiber, for the first time, I get to sleep through the night. It's a little odd. What in the world does fiber have to do with it? Well, she went on to say in the letter that because fiber was able to come to her home, her husband was able to be monitored by his doctors in the local hospital. So he has health issues that require him to be checked on periodically through the night. And for several years, she had to get up every hour to 2 hours to check on him, to make sure his oxygen was good and to make sure other things were working correctly so that he could survive. When fiber came through, she was able to connect back to the hospital, and he's monitored 24/7. She actually gets to go and sleep. And again, that's just another small story of just the hundreds of thousands that we see across the country because of what broadband can do. The education, we all saw during COVID how important that was and how essential. So it's no longer a luxury. It's something that's becoming an essential service that a community needs to thrive and to survive. So what are some factors driving broadband deployment? Well, we know this. We know that the world is changing. We know that it's education. We know that it's entertainment. And we also know that our homes are becoming more and more smart. Um, in my home, I think I have something like 40 devices connected. That's everything from the refrigerator to the washing machine to the hot water heater. If my two teenagers begin to act up, I can hit a button on my cell phone and turn the hot water off. So that they can take a cold shower in the morning to wake them up before they get going to school. But there's all kinds of things that are driving this, and we're going to see this more and more and more and more as time evolves and as technology improves, and we have other things to make our lives more efficient beyond some of the other things that we've spoke about already. So why fiber? Why is fiber important? Why does it matter? And why is this the choice that most of us go down this road? Well, when you think about fiber compared to traditional copper, it just has an unmatched capacity. It has an extended reach. You're able to upgrade it. Has a flexible deployment, and it really has low maintenance. In other words, it's kind of what we like to say. It's future proof. It's just better. You're talking about a optical signal versus an electrical signal, and the ability for that signal to reach out and to get to the last mile, to get to the last customer on the line, so to speak, is just unmatched. And then fiber itself, the speed that you can reach through fiber is just almost impossible to measure compared to what we see with copper. And really, what you're talking about is that the fiber gets in, it's a 20, 30-year investment, and then you just upgrade your electronics over time to be able to continue to improve your technology and improve what's offered to your customers. It's not, when you think about performance, it has an extended reach without performance impact. In other words, you're not losing your ability to connect to the internet, your ability to do the things you need to do because of what's going on with your neighbors. Large numbers of subscribers without performance impact, gig speeds everywhere, and it's the future. What about the future? Well, fiber is the future. One guy mentioned to me, he says, fiber fixes everything. That's not reality, but we understand where he's going with that, is that fiber is that thing that allows us to have the resources. It allows us to have the communication. It allows us to have the speed. Allows us to have the largest number of subscribers and able to perform compared to what we've seen with copper in the past. You're able to, from an operator perspective, serve multiple customer segments. You're able to look at things like smart grid modernization, low operating expense, allowing you to focus on customer experience, which that's really where we're seeing this world go, is that it's not just the fact that I have a fast speed, it's what kind of experience am I having from my service provider, what kind of experience am I having in the home, and fiber allows the operator to provide that best experience, not just speed. We know this because anybody, when you think about your cell phone provider, for example, when you think about them, what you think about is the experience and the support that you receive from them. You think about having to sit on the phone with them for 3 hours to try to get your phone fixed. Well, experience matters in every aspect of our life. When you go to the restaurant, when you go to the grocery store, the experience that you have is important, and we're seeing more and more of that when it comes to these broadband service providers and what they're able to do. It's just difficult to provide any level of experience with copper compared to what you can provide with fiber. So most of us are familiar with coax cable that's in the home, or a twisted pair that you might see like on your phone line or some other devices. And what we see with fiber is that, as we mentioned before, it's not electrical pulses, it's optical pulses. So fiber can transmit more bits of data per second and offer higher bandwidth. It only loses 3% of the signal over distances greater than 100 meters compared to copper's 94% loss of signal. If you've ever had to, if you've ever had to, maybe, for instance, connect a projector or a TV with an old VGA cable or an HDMI cable, you know that you can only go so far without some type of booster because there's signal loss, signal degradation. Well, you don't have that with fiber. And so the ability to send data further, longer, and more complete makes the case for fiber. Also, there's no electrical current in a fiber optic bundle, so they're resistant to fire, electromagnetic interference, lightning, or radio signals. Maybe sometimes that when it rains or storms, if you have copper on your internet, it goes out. So you don't have that problem with fiber. It's also smaller, lighter, and more durable than copper cabling. So real quick, how does fiber work? This is a real simple explanation, but you might hear people talk about PON. PON is passive optical network. GPON, and then more recently, XGS PON that allows you to have 10 gigabit speeds is what we're looking at. But real simply, as you think about a fiber network and think about a build, you will have what's kind of the fiber backbone, or sometimes it's referred to as a fiber ring around a service provider's network. And so that ring is connected all around the system. And then you have offshoots that go to like your subscribers' homes and go to your businesses. There's two main devices in that. You have an OLT that would be in the hut, or it would be in the CO, or some type of building that's set out around the system, probably several of those. And that would have an OLT in it, which is an optical line terminal. This large device, and we'll see a picture of this in a moment, it controls the traffic. It connects back to the outer internet, out to the outer world, allows your system to connect back out, and then it sends and receives traffic through the ONTs, which is the device or optical network terminal in the home, that then connects back to your Wi-Fi gateway or your router that you have in your home. And so basically you have this traffic going back and forth. And so the most current technology that's most widely deployed right now is XGS PON, which allows an upstream and downstream of 10 gigabits per second for the user. This is one of the most important things about PON and about fiber, is it allows you the symmetrical upload and download speed. You may remember in times past where you might have a 50 meg download, but you only have a half a meg upload. So this becomes a problem when you're trying to send files out, when you're trying to stream, to do things like that. But with fiber and with PON, XGS PON, you have a symmetrical service that allows you to go back and forth. These purple boxes are an example of a Calix E7, which is an OLT. So it's back in the hut, and then it sends out, and we'll have a split that can go like a one to multi-split out across the system. Basically, the simplest way to think about it is, if you had a coax splitter in your home back in the day of cable, and you might have one cable coming in and you split it out to multiple TVs before the days of having the set-top boxes. But you can do that across your system, and that's kind of what that might look like in a fiber network. These are some more examples of some devices that you might see in the hut or even on a pole there as OLTs. Some devices that you see there on the bottom of the screen as an MST on the far left, or a splice enclosure there in the middle, or a slack loop. You might have seen these on the poles as you drive around in different areas of your communities to where you see fiber has already been installed. But that's what some of those devices might look like. In the home, you're going to have an ONT, which is basically a media converter that converts PON to Ethernet. This is kind of your demarc point within the home. This device also manages the upstream traffic and allows that connection back to the OLT. And then you're going to have some type of router or Wi-Fi unit in the home. And on the screen there, you see two different versions of that. The white box is a all-in-one unit that has the ONT and the Wi-Fi gateway within it. Or some deployments will have two devices where you'll have a small square box like the one there at the bottom of your screen. That's the ONT, and then that will connect over to the gateway as you move forward. I'm going to pause there because I've said a lot very quickly. Are there any questions on anything that we have looked at so far? Okay.
I don't think
Real
so,
quick.
Tony. I think I don't think so, Nick. You're right on track, I believe.
Okay. we won't go too deep into this, but I'll give you just a quick overview. Basically, what you're doing in any kind of network or data system is you're transmitting information, and you're generally transmitting packets of data. And you have these devices that have to decide, okay, well, where does data go? And so with a PON point to multi-point, you have your OLT that's continuously transmitting data, and then all the packets are addressed with a destination or for an ONT or a service ID. Every ONT receives all the traffic, and then it discards the unwanted packets. And then those packets are encrypted for security. So just think about it like the post office. You know, all the mail comes into your local post office, and it has to be distributed based on the address on the envelope, and it's given to the mail carrier, and they know where to go across the system. Well, that's kind of what the OLT is doing in real super simple terms, with all of the data that's coming across. Is okay, well, I know that this information needs to go to 1, this needs to go to 2, this needs to go to 3, so it sends it all out, and those ONTs will receive it and discard what they do not need, and kind of throw away the junk mail, so to speak. IPv traffic usually is sent to all the ONTs to use. So if everybody's watching Tennessee beat Alabama on a Saturday, then everybody gets to see that, and the ONTs are able to receive that information the way they need to. And then upstream, the traffic is able to come back with a thing called TDM, which is time division multiplexing. The ONTs have their slot to say, okay, this is when the mailman is going to come pick up my mail, and so I'm going to be able to send this down the stream. And this allows the efficient transmitting of the data without collisions and becomes extremely efficient. So really, in the simplest form, you can think about it kind of like your postal service, in that, all right, everybody's got a mailbox. I'm putting my mail out there, and then the mailman is going to come and pick it up, and it's going to go back out into the world to where it needs to go. And this is the efficiency of PON and the multi-point to multi-point traffic flow.
Tony, that's kind of happening in microseconds, though, isn't it? Right? It's not like our mailman who's might be having lunch down at the end of the road.
Absolutely,
right?
Very, very good point. It's happening so fast that we can't even really comprehend how fast that's happening, right? Multi-seconds at a speed that's just unfathomable, really, for us to think about. But like you said, nobody's taking a break down the street eating a sandwich. It's all working constantly over time, and becomes really efficient. And that's really what allows us to do the things that we do on the internet today, just like this conversation that we're having. The amount of calculations, the amount of data that's transmitting across the internet right now is really unbelievable when you stop to think about it. And then you have something, as you said, nothing is constant, and sometimes people ask the question, well, how does 64 subscribers all get 1 or 2 gig service? Well, it's because of statistical multiplexing of bursty traffic. Basically, these devices are smart enough to allocate the traffic to the devices that need it. The reality is, every customer is not going to need 1 to 2 gigs at all times. You will have some specific gamers and other folks like that will use a lot of traffic. The OLTs and the system is able to account for that, and to basically spread the love, so to speak, across the system for everybody to get the information that they need, and data to be able to transfer back and forth across the system. Excuse me. So, like I said, that's a really quick overview, but it's really cool to think about what's actually happening in the system, and to understand, you take the mailman analogy there, and it's probably oversimplification, but as you mentioned, the speed with which that occurs and the technology that allows that to happen is really amazing to actually see it in action. This is what we mentioned a moment ago, that not all broadband users are the same. and they're not all going to be using that amount of data at the same, and that allows us to spread that wealth and spread that connection across all of those. So getting close to time here, but I do want to share a couple of things with you, and then we'll take a moment for questions. But it may be that you want to know more than we've had time to talk about today. There's a couple options that I would share with you that Calix has to offer. One is called Broadband Academy. Basically, what Broadband Academy is it covers the 5 steps to becoming a service provider. This educational resource was designed with you in mind. It was designed with communities and organizations, municipalities, electric cooperatives, and others who were thinking about, hey, we need to bring this service to our community. We need to make sure that our people have access to the services that they need, to the access to the outer world that they need, so they can have access to, job resources, educational resources, medical resources, etc. But we don't know where to start. We don't really know what actually goes into a process like this. Well, Broadband Academy was built just for this, and it covers in a very fundamental, basic way the 5 pillars of becoming a broadband service provider, which covers fund, design, build, operate, and market. So you have complimentary access to that. Expert design courses, knowledges, quiz, badges, and certifications, self-paced lessons, etc. And so if you're interested in checking that out, you can go to calix.com/BBA and sign up for access to those lessons. Real simple, real easy, and go through that at your own pace, and go a little bit deeper into some of the things that we talked about here today, and even a lot of things that we did not talk about today, like funding and like how it operates and how you might build and design a network. And then another thing that I would mention to you, Calix has what I believe is becoming the premier broadband event in the country, called Connections. And this is October 14th through the 17th at the Wynn in Las Vegas. We would love to have you join us for that. If you want to know more about what Calix does and about how we can assist you and your community in building broadband for your community. So that was really fast. That was a lot of information. Hopefully that was helpful, but I'll stop here, and if anybody has any questions, or if there's anything, Bill, that you would like me to cover before we move on.
Could you talk a little bit about the decision-making process of your customers as they decide to move into markets and extend services into unserved areas?
The decision-making is into whether or not they should do broadband?
Yeah, and how they decide which areas to go into?
So it kind of depends on who it is that's making that decision, right? If my world mostly centers around electric cooperatives, which are nonprofit, and they are focused on the needs of their members and their community. And so in their mind, they go everywhere. If they're going to do broadband, for the most part, they're going to hit every person on the line. A lot of decisions are made based upon the funding, what funding that you have from the government, and that determines how you build out. Obviously, if you receive specific funding from the government for a specific area, generally you have a certain amount of time that you have to get that built out for that area. So that's probably where they start. Obviously, you like to start in the denser areas, just to kind of give you some revenue to get your system going. So decisions usually kind of focus around, well, I mean, let's be honest, most things focus around money, right? The cost and what I have to pay for it and where I'm getting those funds kind of determine some of those things. But hopefully, when it comes to the funding from the government, those areas of focus are generally the areas that have the greatest need, the unserved and underserved, because that's why you got the funding to begin with.
Do you have any specific recommendations for working with an electric co-op?
As far as like a community working with them?
Yes, maybe a co-op hesitant to enter the broadband market or moving up the priority list.
Yeah, so I think we're kind of in an interesting time right now. When I first got into this 5 or 6 years ago, it was the co-ops that were building out broadband. Um, I kind of described them as like the William Wallace, that you had these guys going around and they're like, they've taken our women, they've taken our children, and we're going to go, rah rah, take back our land. And now we're kind of in that group that's like, we know we need to do broadband. We probably should be doing broadband, but we're not sure how to do this. We're not sure that if we can do it on our own. And what we're seeing more and more of is the ones that are getting into it now are really looking for partnerships. They're looking for support from their community. They're looking for support from other entities around them to go out and make this happen. So I think one of the biggest things that anybody can do, whether it's with a cooperative or maybe it's a telco, there's a lot of telephone cooperatives that we work with as well, is lots of communication and finding ways to support each other in this and say, okay, what do we need to do as a community to make this happen? What do we need to do to come together to find the resources, to find the funding? Because there's funding that electric cooperatives can go after. There's funding that cities and towns and counties can go after and say, okay, well, how can we come together to bring this money and pool these resources to make this happen for our community? Because I think it's a necessity. I think it's going to be a necessity for your community. If you don't do this, if you don't find a way to get this access there, then your community will be left behind. That's pretty blunt and straight to the point, but where we see the world going, connection and access is going to be a necessity to everyday life.
Could you, we know that a lot of our counties sometimes see fixed wireless as an interim solution, maybe with a goal to going 100% fiber. Could you talk a little bit about fiber's role in fixed wireless and cellular services?
Right. So when you think about a fixed wireless system, everything is probably going back to some type of backbone, right, or backhaul. And so those cellular towers are going to be connected with fiber. In a lot of different, obviously, what you want is fiber to every home and to every business. That's the ultimate best case scenario for any offering, for any solution. But sometimes terrain, sometimes cost, sometimes other factors come into play that say, okay, we can offer broadband, we can offer internet through a fixed wireless solution as a temporary option, and that can work.
Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. Want to make sure there wasn't a question there. But yeah, you're right. So it can be a lot of times different service providers use that as kind of a stopgap, as something that allows them to get that service up, quickly, and to allow connection where, for whatever reason, terrain or other things or density make it more difficult to run fiber to every home, to every business. So yes, that can be a viable option for different providers where needed.
Okay, good. And then finally, any updates on supply chains? Is that we had heard terrible things a year or so ago?
Right.
And kind of a lot of that is easing. Is that accurate?
That is true. Things are easing. Things are getting better. I still would highly recommend to anybody to plan ahead, to think forward about what you're wanting to do. That's one of the things that Calix works really hard to do, is we really try to work with our customers and say, hey, think ahead, think about where you're going to be so that you don't get caught. And that also allows, like us, for instance, to really plan for what your needs are going to be if we kind of know where that's coming. It was kind of funny. We had as our lead times internally came down, we kind of left those long lead times for our customer, just to really customers to kind of force them to continue planning, you know, the way they had through COVID. And our competitors started to kind of use that against us and say, well, Calix can't get their stuff. And so we had to kind of go back and tweak our lead times for that reason. But yes, it is easing. Things are getting better, but sometimes, you know, things can be tricky. As we all know, it's sometimes the weird things that catch us here and there, but a lot better than it was a year ago. Definitely a lot better than it was a year and a half to 2 years ago.
Does Calix offer any kind of costing or feasibility kind of assistance to communities? If a county said, hey, we'd love to, you know, we don't have any good fiber now, we'd love to have fiber across the county, in terms of what that might cost, is that something that you guys even ballparking?
We can have some conversations about that. We do offer a funding consult that's free of charge, and so if anybody's interested in that, we have a team that they can go and look through your area and kind of look at what funding is potentially available, what options that you have, and share some resources of folks that you can work with in that regard. And on the feasibility side, we have several folks within our team. Tennessee, I'm going to be honest, has one of the best sales teams at Calix, I believe. Steve Ralston, who's over in Chattanooga, heads that up and would be glad to work with you and talk with you or have somebody on his team do that. And for the areas that we do not specifically cover, we have a long list of partners that we can connect you with to help with different resources that you may need, hard studies and other things.
Thank you, Nick. I really appreciate that. And as we share your presentation, I think your contact information is there, and nick.jones@calix.com. So now you're in trouble. We've released that email to the world, but we've only got the 4 team leaders, so you're in good shape there. That's not too burden.
Well, I'll be glad to help in any way I can, because at the end of the day, it's one thing to make a dollar in what you do every day, but it's a whole different thing to be able to make a difference. And that's why I get up every morning, is to help communities, to help cooperatives, to help people find the connections they're looking for. And Calix just affords me an opportunity to do that. So
good, nice. Any questions that people have? They're shy this morning, Nick.
It's all good.
Good. Well, Nick, thank you so much for the presentation. I really appreciate it. And I know I've worked with a lot of companies that have used Calix equipment, and always, you know, very loyal customer base. I know that. So
we have. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, you know, what I appreciated was hearing about the Broadband Academy for the first time. We've had some of your colleagues on, and this is the first time that someone has described that, and I really appreciated that as well. Thank you.
Well, I have a lady on my team named Michaela that the first question she's going to ask me is, "Did you plug Broadband Academy?"
See? Smart lady.
So,
and there's a ton of content on that website outside the Academy, just right on the front page of videos from presentations. Obviously, it's a sales conference, right? But it's a great information. And in an intro email yesterday, I believe, that was sent out, I encourage folks to check out a presentation by Gary Johnson from the Paul Bunyan telephone company up in the North Woods of north central Minnesota. So it's lakes and woods, very difficult area, over 5,000 square miles of fiber to the home that they've built in that wilderness. So it's a pretty amazing place. And their home city, Bemidji, is really, I think, a national rural leader town of 20,000 that has really got its act together on supporting technology-oriented activities, not just business, but community activities. So I'd encourage folks to take a look at that as well.
Yeah, I
Nick,
believe they have
thank
a
you
big.
so much.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. Enjoyed being with you, and anything I can do to help anybody, please feel free to reach out, and I'll, the things I don't know, I'll find the person that knows them.
Hey, maybe we'll all go to Vegas.
There you go. It's like I said, it's probably one of the reasons that I ended up at Calix is because the first time I went to Connections before I worked for Calix, just because of the cool things that are happening there. So I would highly encourage you to use any of those resources and let us know where we can help you. Because at the end of the day, that's what we want to do.
Good. Thank you so much.
Thank you much. Y'all have a great day.
So, and Nick, oh, there we go. Perfect. Thank you. And let's just do a quick update of where folks are and what's happening in their counties and any issues or challenges. Should have your surveys tested, and I think at least one county's kind of got theirs finalized. We did get some good feedback from one of the communities, Bedford, I think, and we discovered that in a little survey version creep that in our last round of communities, we had added in speed tests for cellular companies as well as for your fixed wireless or fixed landline. And so it wasn't in this survey. So we have brought that forward to put that into the survey. Our survey team had a good meeting yesterday. Is actually the first time we had our Illinois helper and our Heartland Ford staff person and myself in a group together, and so that was really helpful. So for those who contributed that feedback, you'll see that some of those improvements or suggestions that you had put in the your final survey version. What's going on in Roane County?
Hey, Bill, just looking forward to getting the survey disseminated this next week. One question on ours at the last 2 pages concerning the agriculture of our survey after tell us your broadband story.
Yeah.
Is that necessary in our
It is not.
Okay, so we can go ahead and just take that out?
Yes.
All right. Anybody else got anything? All right, that's all we have, Bill. Thank you.
Okay, good enough. Thank you. And I understand that Roane is having some provider interviews in their breakout room here today. So good for you guys. Bedford County.
Hey guys, good morning. We do have our survey. We have the group in here today. We're going to make certain that everyone has tested it, have the language that we're happy with. That's going to go out post haste. Also want to let you know it has been translated, our introduction into Spanish, as well as you guys did a great job in getting the survey translated as well. We do have planned on your visit on June the 20th, our broadband summit. We have a range of speakers lined up. We have some good content I think will be available. Mr. Harwell has positioned ourselves to use Shelbyville Central High School as the auditorium. We will be getting invites out there. We will start with publicity probably the next day or so. Tracy has done a magnificent job, has developed our own web page, our Connect Bedford on Facebook. We are now getting out in the community with our speaking engagement. We're going to talk about that today, and I've put on our roadshow. And we're going to also talk about one of the comments was about the economic impact that lack of broadband coverage has. And Dr. John Boutwell is here today, and we're going to discuss a concept he's going to look at is what is the educational impact for lack of broadband. So he's going to do some statistics and work up a plan for that. Dr. Van Ayers has been working closely with USDA, and he's going to update us on that at our breakout session with looking at a real opportunity and partnering with them on a grant project. So we have quite a lot to cover in this afternoon's meeting, or this morning's meeting, and look forward to everything getting rolled out and surveys going out in the field in the next days. So that's our update.
Good deal. Thank you. Sounds great. Claiborne.
It looks like I'm the only one from Claiborne that's on, or I'm the only one that's not too shy, but I do know that we have, Joe sent out the sample surveys, I think last week, and they're making a few tweaks, and he said that he would be giving the green light on sending the surveys out in the next little bit, and that's pretty much all I have.
Okay, thank you. And
There's several of us on here.
Oh,
good.
good.
Joe's on here, Tom Risen, and this is Karen.
Okay, Karen, I can't see who is and who isn't, so I apologize.
I'm on here as well, Nick, or Bo, just as Bo.
Okay.
Good. Full room. That's good.
Sorry, Bo, didn't see you.
That's
I'm here.
glad to hear that. Any other updates from the Claiborne team then, since we know you're all here? That's all right. Let's go to Monroe.
All right, guys, we are excited to be finally seeing some good progress. We decided on our official name for the group, and we created a logo for that to help with branding. And we're going to call ourselves Link Up Monroe, just to create some uniqueness to that and make it easy for the public to identify us. In addition to that, we've sent out some scheduling for providers, and we're awaiting responses for those. So we should have those probably scheduled by early next week. And then we've also started sending out our survey. We're doing our email campaign right now, and then we plan on moving into the other phases very soon. So that's about it.
Well, it sounds like everyone's got a lot of work to do in the breakouts, and so let's just read. We'll empower those, and I'll be around to see you. Thank you so much, everyone.